Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Wonder Weeks. The Wonder Weeks is a Dutch comedy that tells the story of three couples who have all recently welcomed new infant children to their families. Upon welcoming their children, they all find themselves experiencing different issues that are unique to their own circumstances. One family tries to find a healthy work-life balance, another deals with a donor parent becoming more involved, and the last deals with the cultural aspects of an interracial marriage. They all help each other through an exclusive club for mothers, in which they try to navigate motherhood and their own lives as best as possible. I thought the movie was okay at first, but the longer it went on, the more tiring and boring it became. It's definitely not the worst comedy I've seen, but it just fails to be remotely interesting, on account of its numerous cliches, weak comedy, and unfocused narrative. I'll start by going over each of the individual stories first. The first one, and arguably the most significant, revolves around a lawyer named Anne, who's trying her best to work her way into the club for mothers so that she can secure a daycare spot for her son, and hopefully breathe a bit easier too. Anne was an okay character for a protagonist, but she just doesn't stand out in any way. I sympathize with her as far as her feeling overworked and wanting more time to relax, but beyond that, she never goes through any sort of arc or transformation regarding her motherhood. She stays the same bland character for pretty much most of the movie. The second story revolves around a lesbian couple, Kim and Roos, who rely on a family friend named Kai to be a sperm donor to help them conceive children, and Kai decides to become more involved. I like this story the most simply because Kai was the only character who truly interested me. He has a criminal record that's been buried, and he's trying to keep it under wraps so that he can spend time with his biological children. It's a very basic interpretation, but it's still intriguing to see this man be such a good dad, only to have things be turned around on him. It provides some food for thought regarding the right to fatherhood for men who have criminal records. The third and final story was by far the worst of the three. It follows a Dutch woman named Ilse, who's welcomed a son with her Moroccan husband, and she has a hard time adjusting to the cultural aspects of her marriage, at least supposedly. Truth be told, I kept waiting for her to experience some sort of dilemma from it, and it never really happens. There's only a few key moments involving the arrival of her mother-in-law and the circumcision of their child, which does warrant some discussion, but Ilse never has a problem with these things. She spends a lot of time getting upset at other things, which are mostly just bad comedy, but for these more dramatic moments, she more or less just shrugs her shoulders and goes, "Yeah, this is fine." The only notable gimmick this movie has going for it is the way it integrates and intersects multiple storylines together. All of the characters interact with each other at some point, and often at the same time. In theory, I like how it shows multiple perspectives of parenting, as it demonstrates not everyone does parenting in the same way, and gives them a sense of community to fall back on, just like in real life. I say in theory because the movie failed with executing this concept in an entertaining way. The stories jump around so much between one group to another that it becomes jarring, and thus hard to get attached to any of them and empathize with what happens to them. Even taking that out of the equation, the movie just doesn't do anything captivating with any of the characters. It is nice to have them connect with each other on occasion, but it doesn't change the fact that their stories don't say anything new or noteworthy about parenting as a whole. Because they all hang out together, attend the same club activities, and have the same sort of issues with their babies, it gets to a point where the movie becomes really repetitive. It's just the same thing over and over again ad nauseum, and this makes it incredibly dull to sit through. Anything that's done to shake things up is usually only found in its poor attempts at comedy. This is one section that I found myself frustrated with, because while the attempts at drawing laughs are there and are obvious to see, the movie simply just isn't funny. I like that it's not totally ridiculous with slapstick and all that, but the humor is just as repetitive as the story is. Once again, the families usually deal with the same issues when considering just the babies themselves. They all deal with their crying and pooping and being an inconvenience in general, and it's just boring. Another part of the comedy comes from the numerous cliches the characters have. It feels like just about every element of this movie has been ripped from other movies similar to or better than it, and the ones that feel more new still don't work. There's a whole love triangle story with Anne, her husband Barry, and their nanny Hester that never goes anywhere. The Moroccan elements with Ilse and her husband feel more racist than they do funny, and even the emotional payoff behind Kai's criminal record is dampened by one of the two mothers always being suspicious of him. One could make the argument that the movie's trying to be a more grounded and modern presentation of parenting with how subdued the comedy is and how everyone has this degree of commonality, but the movie doesn't even try to be unique. It's just too bland and uninterested in standing out, which makes it hard to care about anything that happens in it. And it's a shame because there are parts where I can see it's trying to go somewhere with its messages on motherhood and how hard it is. It's just that because everything else about it is so uninspired, it makes the more meaningful parts harder to get invested in. Overall, The Wonder Weeks is a disappointing comedy that doesn't say anything new about parenthood and fails to be funny either. If you like comedies and want to watch one centered around different interpretations of parenting, you might be intrigued, but personally I just didn't enjoy it. I like what it had going for with its multiple interpretations surrounding parenting, but there's no depth behind any of them, and the poorly executed humor doesn't help either. It's just another lame comedy whose portrayal of the weeks felt more like boredom than it did a wonder. What did you think about this movie? Were you entertained by its portrayal of parenthood, or did you also find it boring to watch? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Wonder Weeks. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Turkish romantic comedy, You Do You. Bye bye!